I fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it. Welcome to Lurk, bringing you creepy, strange, and bone-chilling stories, with your hosts, Tim Harrison and Jamie Jackson.
Hey Lurkers, it's Jamie.
And Tim. So Jamie, what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about the disappearance of Dennis Martin.
Dennis Martin.
Who is part of the missing 411.
Oh. So, sad, but kind of cool. I love missing 411 because it's crazy. Nothing adds up. Nothing never adds up on missing 411.
On some of them, yeah. For those who don't know, who may not know, because we do have some new lurkers who are not up on all of the paranormal.
Lurk. Alright, yo, done. I'm serious. This happens all the time.
It may not have picked up on the microphone. So, once again, we're sitting here in our studio, which is Tim's gym, and there was a noise over here to my left, which is down by the women's bathroom door, which from the last episode slammed shut. This time it sounded like somebody was messing with the resistance bands hanging on the wall, but they're not moving. They have in the past, according to Tim, but there was a definite noise down there. We're the only two in a very small office space, basically, is what this is.
Should I go check on her?
No, I have chills. Nah,
I kind of want to go check.
Well, go check then.
Okay. You can't say I got chills and I go check it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I can look. There's nothing there. It wasn't the door.
All right, so the light's off, so there's no one in the girl's bathroom.
Well, there's nobody in the building.
Hello?
We record on Sunday morning, and it's now 7:45, but when we got here, there's nobody here on a Sunday morning. It's an office
There's
complex.
nobody here on Sundays.
Just us. Anyway, so getting back.
That threw you off, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Totally did. Missing 411.
Yes.
So, Missing 411 is a series of books written by David Paulides, who is a retired police officer. And he has a set of conditions that he uses to determine if something fits within his missing criteria. So, it's usually somebody goes missing, dogs can't find the scent, rain or other severe weather moves in shortly after they've gone missing. If they're found missing clothing, like they don't have their boots on or they've taken clothing off. They're found in odd locations, either children being found in places that physically they probably logically wouldn't go to, like either up steep inclines, or they've been found in areas that are previously searched. So those are just some of the conditions. He got started with this. There was a park ranger that tipped him off that there were a large number of missing people in national parks and that there was no database for those missing people. And he has tried to put in FOIA or Freedom of Information Act requests and got nowhere. He has never gotten any of that information from the National Park Service about these cases for lots of different reasons. And he does have several books. Do not look on Amazon. They are selling them for a lot of money. He sells them himself through his website. It'll be in the show notes. Massive brain fart right there. I can't remember that. I'll put a link to his site in there, anybody who's interested in his books. He also is a Bigfoot researcher. He never comes out to say what he thinks is involved in these missing person cases. Some people think that he is alluding that Bigfoot is involved. I don't. I think he's just kind of putting them out there. They're strange. Some of them are stranger than others. Some of them are seriously mysterious and raise a lot of questions, and some of them are easily explained. I'm not going to give it away.
You're not going to give it away?
We'll discuss this particular case. We'll talk about it towards the end, whether I think it is actually a strange missing 411 case or not.
Or just a boy that was walked off somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
We'll get into the details.
So, where does this take place?
This takes place in... Let me flip my notes over so I can...
The 10 pages of notes.
It's not 10. I think it's 8.
No. You gotta let go.
Okay, I did actually find for this, that's 82 pages, but they're not my notes. I actually found finally the 82 pages from the National Park Service, their official report, all the pages from that. It was 82. I printed them, I read them. It actually was pretty interesting.
Well, they're not your notes, right?
But those aren't my notes.
No.
I mean, I use them for making my notes, but they're not.
Where does this take place, Jamie?
This takes place on the Appalachian Trail, for those of you who are in the north, and the Appalachian Trail for those of you who are in the south, because it's said both ways.
What if you're in the west? You go, "Wow!"
They say whatever, I guess. I don't know. So this section of the Appalachian Trail, it hugs the border between Tennessee and North Carolina. He went missing from an area of the trail known as Spence Field. This area is actually quite popular. I don't want to say it's North Carolina. It actually is both. It hugs the actual state border from both states. So it's Great Smoky Mountain National Park would be the easiest way to define where this happened.
Okay.
To make a short story long. Okay, so getting into this, Dennis Martin was almost 7 years old when he went missing.
So a young fella.
He was young. He actually went missing about a week shy of his 7th birthday.
That's terrible.
Which is awful. He was born June 20th, 1962, and disappeared during a camping trip June 14th, 1969. It was Father's Day weekend, and the Martin family was known for this annual camping trip. The trip included William, or Bill Martin, who was Dennis's dad, Clyde Martin, Dennis's grandfather, and Doug Martin, who was his 9-year-old brother. This was actually in 1969. This trip was the first time Dennis was considered old enough to even go.
Okay, so his first time really ever going.
It was his first time going on this specific trip.
Okay.
Which, as a parent, I can just say I would never, ever forget that I made the decision, okay, you're old enough now, and then he disappeared.
Yeah.
I mean, this has to be, Tim and I are both parents. Mine are much older. I have grandchildren at this point. Tim has 2 little ones, but I think this has to be the worst thing for a parent.
100%.
I mean, it's awful to lose your child, but to have them go missing and to not know what happened to them, I think is the worst thing.
No, yeah. Your brain starts running. I mean, if you hear him quiet in the house, your brain starts running a million miles a second, like what's going on.
Yeah.
So imagine being out in the middle of the woods, first time, and boom, this happens.
Yep.
Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, so this is actually, I mean, we were both kind of looking forward to doing this episode, but not because really of the subject. It's actually a subject neither one of us really are.
Yeah, I'm not too happy
We're not
about it.
thrilled with it. It's tragic. And my grandson is 7. He hikes with me. He is in Scouts and does all this, so it hits close to home, when you think about this.
Scary.
Yeah.
Very scary.
Yes. So 7-year-old Dennis on this camping trip, Father's Day weekend, it's the first time. He was described by his parents as being typical 7-year-old boy. He was shy, afraid of the dark, not very aggressive or independent. His dad said that he was actually part of a special education group at school, and that basically he was about a half a year behind in his age chronologically. So if he's 7, then he's kind of mentally like a 6.5-year-old, which really, in my thought, isn't that big of an issue. But that's actually one of the missing 411 criteria for kids. A lot of the kids are either so young they can't communicate. When they're found, they can't communicate accurately where they've been because they're so young, or some of them have some developmental problems where they may not communicate as well. So that, not all of them, but some of them.
That's kind of crazy that they all kind of have that in common.
Yeah, they do have that in common. So his mom considered him an experienced mountain hiker for a 7-year-old. He was said to usually be in the front of the group on hikes and was the one who liked to pick the trails. And he often begged to go to the mountains on the weekends. Some people may think it's strange to call a 7-year-old an experienced mountain hiker. I don't think she's saying, yeah, he can go hike these giant mountains or whatever. She's just saying for his age, he knew the ins and outs. My grandson knows the ins and outs of hiking. I'm comfortable taking him hiking. He knows the rules. He knows how to follow trail signs. He's done it many times, so that's all she's saying. Not that he's, oh yeah, we set him out in the woods all the time by himself. Just
he's ready to climb Everest. Let's go.
Yeah, I just want to qualify that with with that comparison. I don't think she's saying in a million years that, oh yeah, we let him go hike by himself all the time, just that he's used to doing this. This is what they did. And you're talking late 60s, no video games, kids actually went outside and played.
What?
I know, no cell phones.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Our tracking devices were off?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, man.
So the 2 men and 2 boys began their trip by spending the night of June 13th at the Russell Field shelter on the Appalachian Trail. And I am going to post a link, as always, of Google Maps in the show notes. And I've got it here for Tim, so he can just see where they started off. Russell Field shelter.
Okay.
The next day, they got up and they hiked about 2 miles to Spence Field, where they spent the day hanging out and playing in the meadow there. The trail to Spence Field is considered a novice trail, and it's not very hard to travel, so nothing too strenuous or too difficult. And I think this is a very popular area of the park and of the trail, so, there's well-traveled, familiar. They probably have been here before, and I think this is where they would take their trip every year. Okay. Not Dennis, because it's his first time, but the dad and the grandfather and the older brother. Spence Field is what they call a mountain bald, or a mountain meadow, a Highland Meadow. It's basically an area at the top of the mountain that doesn't have any trees. It used to be used as pasture land for early settlers for sheep and cattle.
So it's kind of open, pretty easy to see everything.
Yeah, there's some shrubs and that sort of thing, but it's a grassy meadow. The Appalachian Trail goes through the roughly 200-acre meadow, and it, like I said, it hugs the Tennessee-North Carolina border. Bill Martin, Dennis's father, said it was as bright and pleasant an afternoon as you can imagine. So, beautiful day.
No crazy weather that can cause something to happen.
Not at that time, no. And then while they were at Spence Field, they were joined by another family from Alabama who also had 2 boys and who coincidentally also had the same last name of Martin, and they were no relation.
Roll Tide, baby, roll Tide.
Yeah. So this family from Alabama asked if their kids could play with Doug and Dennis, and of course, sure. And I just want to point out, as far as what Dennis was wearing, he had a bright red t-shirt, dark green hiking shorts, white socks, and black Oxford shoes. So these are kind of shoes that are more like a dress shoe or like a public school shoe, not a tennis shoe.
So where did he wore that for hiking?
Well, I guess back then that wasn't really super uncommon.
Okay.
I'm guessing, because I wasn't born then, so I don't know.
Well, I'll be sure I'll hop back in my time machine and go give someone a call.
Yeah, so anyway, so that's what he was wearing. It's important. The shirt color is important. So the kids were playing hide and seek, and then the older kids decided it would be fun to try to sneak up behind the parents and jump out and scare them. Young kids aren't really very good at being sneaky.
You hear them coming from 10 miles away.
You hear them coming. They don't whisper very well, so they discuss their plan and you hear them. Bill Martin said, "We knew what they were doing. We also knew when the other kids sent Dennis another way because they thought the red t-shirt he was wearing would spoil their scheme." So the older kids were going to hide and sneak around behind the parents going in one direction, and they made told Dennis he had to go around the other way because they thought, bright red shirt, they're going to see him, because they thought that the parents had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
Not true. They knew exactly what they were doing. So it was about 4:30. Dennis's father watched him hide behind a tree to start his sneak attack. And Bill Martin said he never took his eyes off the tree, and it was about 55 feet away from him. So he had his eyes on the area where Dennis was hiding behind.
So he's fixated on that area.
Yes, because Dennis is the youngest, so he's watching where he went to hide. The other kids eventually jump out, and Dennis didn't. And immediately his dad went to look for him because he knew he went behind this tree.
He should be here.
Why isn't he jumping out?
Yeah.
By Bill Martin's estimation, he said it was no more than 3 minutes. Later, he said maybe, when he was pressed about it, he said maybe 5. But he said several times, he didn't think it was more than 3 minutes from the time he went behind the tree to the time he discovered that he wasn't jumping out with the other kids.
I mean, also, he's fixated on the area, you know what I mean?
Right.
You see something coming from the left or the right, or even sometimes in the far distance coming. You should see something.
Right. So he immediately began calling for Dennis, and he looked for him behind the tree. He did not find him there, and Bill Martin began running down about a 1-mile stretch of the trail calling his son's name.
So he took off.
He took off running down the trail, calling for his son. About a mile down, turned around and came back.
Okay.
Father and the grandfather split up, began searching for Dennis. They questioned Appalachian Trail hikers in the area. No one had seen him. Clyde Martin, Dennis's grandfather, ended up hiking almost 8 miles down to the ranger station to report Dennis is missing, and that was around 8:40 p.m.
And so this is all within a few hours of him going missing. They already got a plan going, so they know something's wrong.
Yeah, they've already searched. There's a couple side trails in the area, and they searched those, asked hikers coming from different directions. Because your first thought is not that he's gone, it's that he's there and
he just ran off somewhere.
You just don't know. He went down the wrong trail or something.
Right, got turned around some weird reason.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, his mom said that he was a experienced enough hiker that he knew not to go off the trail.
So he knew not to do nothing.
He knew not to go off the trail and that to follow the trail. But we'll get into that. Heavy rain moved in about 8:30, and it ended up bringing about 2.5 to 3 inches of rain, and it continued to rain heavily off and on for 2 weeks.
That's wild.
Yeah. So it went from being a gorgeous day to I think it was thunderstorms that moved in, torrential rain.
It went to hell quickly.
Pretty much, yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah. June 15th, 1969, it's actual Father's Day. Sunday morning, 5 a.m., that's when the serious search began.
What a terrible Father's Day.
I know.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and you'll never forget it.
No.
You'll never forget it. So they searched the trails and the drainage areas. And by drainage areas, that's streams and things that drain into larger bodies of water.
Okay.
So because of the rain and everything, they're checking all those. They had 2 Huey helicopters that were sent to the area to aid in the search. The FBI was called in. It's a national park, missing child, so FBI is involved.
Normal kind of procedures here so far.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary.
Okay.
Rangers contacted U.S. Forest Service and inquired about some special forces troops that were training in the area of western North Carolina, which is not far from where this is taking place.
So they're close by.
They're close by training. Yes. And Colonel Kinney, who was in command of the troops who were training, he received permission to send 40 Special Forces troops to search the area.
That's crazy.
Yeah. These were said to be Green Beret.
Woo!
And many of them were veterans of Vietnam.
Oh, you got some big fellas coming up in there.
So this means they are experienced in dense jungle foliage.
They should find him then.
Yeah.
That's what we're getting to.
The terrain in the area here, the reason why it's important to know that Dennis would know not to go off trail, and it would be unusual for him to do so, is that there are a lot of rhododendron thickets in this area. The trail is easy and clear. Off the trail, the terrain gets very dense. It's thick. It's not easy to travel. That's why his mom pointed out he would know to stay on the trail. That's something they taught him. He would know it. It would be easiest for him to stay on the trail.
Okay.
So this is also, case in point, why Green Beret, Special Forces, who already had experience in jungle terrain of Vietnam, would be beneficial to help search for a boy in this terrain because it's very thick and dense.
Most definitely.
Not a jungle, but similar terrain.
Yeah.
They also had search and rescue expertise. Their unit was involved in going to get hostages back, finding hostages and taking them back and things like that.
Search, retrieve, bring back.
Yeah. So I do want to say David Paulides in his book put a lot of emphasis on the fact that the Green Beret were there and it was a mystery why they were there, and claimed that no one knew why they had showed up and that they were operating separately from the official search. They said that they had their weapons with them, all this stuff. So I just want to point out that that's really not very accurate, and that's according to the official search records, that 82 pages that I went through. They were contacted by the Park Service. Like, it was a chain of people. It says who specifically contacted who. They got permission for these troops to help. They were there. They were in the area. They were not far away.
Okay. They
have expertise in jungle searches and searching and in the terrain, and they were asked to come and help. They did operate with the Park Service. They were part of several different meetings and things like that. So they were operating. I mean, they searched they're in their own way, but they were in communication with the Park Service. They were not renegade searchers. The photos that I've seen did not show their weapons, so I'm not sure where that came from.
Maybe try to flush the story a little bit, make it sound kind of more...
I don't know. I mean, it's possible that they might have had them. I mean, they're training. If they're training, then they're training as if they would be in a wartime, so they're going to have their weapons with them while they're training. If they're leaving their training area, chances are they would be bringing their weapons with them. So it's possible. The photos I saw did not show them with weapons, so I'm not really sure where that came from. So I wanna throw that out there because that was a big part of this story. Before I started the research for this podcast episode, I was thinking the Green Beret were a mystery. Not a mystery.
So it solved pretty quickly.
Solved pretty quick reading this report.
They're working with everybody, not in their own individual means kind of deal.
Right, and they have their own command system. So, it's going to be differently than other searchers. They're going to operate a little bit on their own, but they were in contact with the Park Service. So officially at this point there are 240 searchers looking for Dennis on the first day.
Does this include the 40 or no?
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if they're there yet. They've
Okay.
just received the permission to send 40 of them. I don't know if they've gotten there yet.
So what you're saying is they are coming.
They're coming. 2 helicopters were used to ferry people to and from search areas, and jeeps were in and out shuttling people. Dwight McCarter was a former ranger, and he was part of the search team at the time. He said the search appeared to be using the same type of organization that was used for large forest fires.
So like a search and retrieve?
I guess so. I don't know. That it was a large-scale operation shuttling people to and from areas. I think that's how they operate in forest fires, where they shuttle people to the point that they need to fight the fire, that type of thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That he compared it to that.
One of the things I used to research this is a book by Dwight McCarter. It's called Lost, A Ranger's Journal of Search and Rescue, authored by Dwight McCarter and Ronald Schmidt. It's actually out of print, so you won't be able to find this unless you find it in used on Amazon. I did find a used copy somewhere. I don't know if it was Amazon. I got it from, I think it came from a Tennessee Goodwill. They posted it online and I bought it, and it's actually signed.
Oh yeah, this is the book that's signed.
This is the signed copy, so.
Is that Dwight?
Cool. Dwight McCarter signed it.
Dwight signed it.
Mm-hmm.
Is
I'm not.
Dwight still alive?
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I think Dwight McCarter might have been the former park ranger who tipped off David Paulides about the people missing in the park, in the national parks. So just putting that out there. It is an interesting book if you're interested in search and rescue type things. It's not very big, but it discusses quite a few of the missing 411 cases.
I'm just looking at the book here. Is that the chapter for Dennis Martin?
Mm-hmm.
That is a horrible title.
Father's Day.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's
that's
rough.
the day that the search started, so.
Man, that's rough.
Yes. So I will put the title of the book in there. I don't think I can link it to anything because, like I said, it's out of print and not easily found. So June 16th, second day of search. An intense grid search was done from the point last seen at Spence Field down to Russell Field, which is where they started their hike from. And that was on the Tennessee side. The drainages and trails were continued to be searched, and areas that were previously covered were searched again, especially the drainages at Spence Field. So anything, streams or anything that are considered drainages, that's what they're talking about, they searched them again.
So they're double checking everything, triple checking.
Yes. 40 Special Forces troops with their communications van were scheduled to arrive at nearby Cades Cove that night. So the night they weren't there the first day, they were there the night of the second day.
Okay.
Of the search, so the 16th. June 17th, there were 350 searchers. Another grid search was done of Spence Field. This time, students from nearby University of Tennessee came in and did that grid search.
Go Volunteers.
So different people, fresh eyes.
Okay.
Roads were becoming impassable at this point because of the mud from the heavy rains and overuse, because they had jeeps taking people in and out of the different areas.
I'll be curious if before this happened, if they had a weather forecast, it wasn't calling for, next week good weather, and all of a sudden a storm just popped out of nowhere kind of deal.
It's possible. I mean, forecasting, things are so much different today than they were years ago. it's possible sometimes storms pop up. I have no idea.
That's true. I was always just kind of interested in that.
Yeah, I don't know how long they were planning on being camping. I don't know if they were going to be heading out that night, the night of the 14th, to be home for Father's Day, because there were 2 other smaller, younger children at home. So Dennis had 3 siblings.
Okay.
Not just his older brother, Doug. He had two other siblings. So it's possible they were planning on being home before the weather got really bad.
Man.
I don't know. That would just be complete speculation on my part. But
Oh.
storms can pop up. Thunderstorm, you have the right conditions, storms can pop up anytime.
That's true.
So around 2 p.m. on June 17th, 2 searchers find an indistinct footprint on the North Carolina side. It's a little confusing. Sometimes it just says footprint. Sometimes it says there's a shoe print and a footprint. So saying that there's a shoe missing off of the one.
Dennis's foot or somebody's foot.
Right. It was determined not to be Dennis's. So apparently the parents were asked. They said they thought it was too big. It was dismissed. There were Boy Scouts that had been in the area that joined in to help the search. They dismissed it as footprints possibly from the Boy Scouts in the area. I kind of feel like that was easily dismissed.
A little too quick.
Too quick.
Yeah, a little too quick.
In mud, if you step down, your foot kind of slides a little bit. So it could look bigger. And I don't know what they said it was indistinct. I'm assuming it was not a very clear, fresh thing. Plus, they made a cast of it, and the cast is what the parents looked at to determine if it could be Dennis's. They thought it was too big.
I mean, what is it? The big thing is like big footprints and bear prints get kind of mixed up. People are like, how do you do that? It's when a bear steps, they'll slide a little
bit.
And who says Dennis didn't do the same thing?
So 22 more special forces joined the search. So we now have 62 special forces, Green Beret. At this point, psychic predictions start coming in with tips on where to find Dennis.
I'm not against psychics by any means, but when you start bringing them in as like an investigator, you kind of know you're at the last. You're on your last straws.
Yeah, and they did run down the tips that were coming in. They did check them out.
So they're doing everything possible right now.
Yes, and there were 615 searchers. So this is the 18th. There were 615 searchers that day.
So what is that, 4 days later, max? Because he went missing on the 14th, am I correct?
Yeah, so this is the third. This would be the 3rd day of searching, because the search officially started the 15th.
Oh, okay, so 3rd day of official searching.
3rd day of official searching, 615 searchers. During the night, some of the searchers would camp in the area, and they would build large fires in the hopes Dennis would see them, and it would draw him out.
Do you know what a typical search period day kind of goes? You know what I mean? Like, do they search for like a week? Do they search for like 3-4 days? Does age matter? You know what I mean? Like, someone that's like 80 years old that goes missing in the woods, they're like, are we looking for a day or two? Versus someone who's 19, I'm not trying to be that guy, but I got to ask that question.
I don't know specifically what it is. Things are a lot different now than they were then.
Okay.
Because of this search, specifically.
Oh, because of Dennis?
Yeah. So I think they have a specific time frame that they search with the hopes of finding somebody alive.
Okay.
And then at a point, it's not search and rescue, it's a recovery.
Mm.
But I don't know the time frame. And I think it would depend on age. Somebody who is older, a teen, if you're talking about children, somebody in their teens is going to have more knowledge and things to be able to possibly survive than somebody who is 7 or 5.
Oh, yeah.
Or a toddler. They're not going to have the same knowledge. So June 19th, that's day 4 of the search, 5 days since Dennis has been missing. More grid searches. They also started checking the predictions from psychics. As
parents, that must be terrible.
I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like. I did want to read a little thing from Dwight McCarter's book, Psychic Jean Dixon. She was very popular back in the day. I believe she was like...
The Psychic of Rhode Island kind of deal?
Psychic to the celebrities, to the stars or something. Her name is familiar. I don't remember her. I think my grandmother used to get the tabloids. She called them her dirty books.
Her dirty books.
That's where I know Jean Dixon's name from.
Where my DBs be at?
She would be listed in there, but I think she was popular amongst celebrities. She was well known and considered to be legitimate.
And don't they have someone now, like the Psychic of Rhode Island or whatever? They have the TV show about her.
Long Island Medium.
Long Island Medium.
She's pretty good. So Dwight McCarter says, psychic Jean Dixon predicted searchers will find young Martin behind a waterfall on the North Carolina side of Spence Field. She said he went out level first, then went down an incline and turned left at a 40-degree angle and up a little, then went back down and would be below a point of incline. The left turn is in a clearing with no trees. It is more or less bare ground. Searchers following this advice as best they could failed to find any sign of Dennis.
How does a psychic get these kind of premonitions or whatever? You know what I mean?
I think they're all different. Some of them have dreams, and there's another one I'm going to talk about a little bit later. I don't really know. I don't know. She may have actually tried to focus on it to try to get information to help. She was that. I mean, this everybody knew about this search. This was nationwide. The White House knew about this search. It made national news. So
okay.
It may be she had tried to have a vision or get information in order to help. I just wanted to put that one in there. So they were actively searching tips and things that were coming in from psychics.
Okay.
Nothing was found. June 20th, it's now Dennis's 7th birthday. No. And there was a headline that I saw that just totally broke my heart. It said, only a search party on his 7th birthday.
That's terrible.
It's awful. At this point, they are actively searching animal excrement, specifically bear and wild boar. And they're checking pit toilets, which are, I was going to say crappy toilets. They're at the shelters, the Appalachian Trail shelters. They're like a latrine. They're built on a platform, so everything is above ground and it's like enclosed, and so
just say your shiz goes below ground.
It doesn't go below ground. It's above ground in a pile below the platform, under the platform. So they've started checking these as well. Yeah, and fire towers were checked, so in case he climbed up into a fire tower,
hiding up there.
Mm-hmm. And they were also keeping an eye on vulture activity.
Ugh.
June 20th, there's now 780 searchers. There was a strategy meeting, and it included the National Park Service and Special Forces, and it was regarding the procedure if Dennis was found alive or dead. At this point, the way I read it, it was more focusing on procedure if his body was found. It discussed guarding the body, who was guarding the body, until they were able to get somebody in there to get him out, that type of thing.
Man.
Special forces were involved in that. Like I said, they did meet with the Park Service and were involved. And it did list what to do if he was found alive, the procedure on calling that in. But I kind of got the impression from the report that at that point they were thinking they were not going to find him alive.
Yeah, it's like 80% talking about, when we find him dead versus a 20% that if he's alive, this is what we do. Yeah,
this is 6 days after he went missing, 5 days into the official search, and
crazy storms.
A lot of storms. It got chilly at night. They thought that he would be okay, but you can get hypothermia in 50-degree weather.
That's not very
He had shorts and a t-shirt on. It's raining. He's going to be wet and cold. And
possibly without a shoe.
Right. So at this point, I think they were leaning towards, it was a recovery at this point. That's what I think they were leaning towards. I'm speculating. This is complete speculation, but that was my impression.
Yeah.
So the Johnson City Press reported on this day that of the hundreds of people that had been lost in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park in its 35-year history, which at that time in 1969, the history up to that point, none of the others that were missing as long as Dennis, and they were all found alive. So they had hundreds of people at this point within 35 years that had gone missing. They had all been found, and they were all found alive.
Okay, so nothing, how do I say, in an I don't mean in a bad way, but nothing terrible has happened. People have gone missing, right? They've
Right.
all been found. They all have been taken. They're all good now.
Yes. This is the longest they've gone without finding somebody. June 21st, traffic into the area of Cades Cove is halted just to try to keep some people out. And I have another map here. Cades Cove is here. This is where he went missing.
Okay.
Cades Cove is a very popular tourist area. There's a parking area there. A lot of people go there.
Okay.
On this day, the 21st, there were 1,400 searchers.
Wow.
This is the most of any search. This was the most of any of the days of searching. So this was the height. There were 1,400 people looking for him.
That's incredible.
The number of special forces increased to 71.
Wow.
The search continued until June 29th, and at that point, after the 29th, only the 3 best trackers continued to look for Dennis, and then September 13th, they ended the search completely. June 29th, the big search totally was done, and then they had 3 men who were considered the best at tracking. They were still looking.
They were hanging back.
They had 3 people constantly looking and tracking until September 13th, and then that was it.
Now, you ever wonder, with that many people looking, they can cause issues?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we'll get to the end of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to bring up, there was a report from a man named Harold Key, and he and his family had been out hiking in Cades Cove the day that Dennis disappeared. So June 14th, they were at Cades Cove, and he said that he and his family heard what they said sounded like a boy screaming in the woods. And then moments later, Mr. Key's son pointed to what he thought was a bear. And upon closer inspection, Mr. Key determined it was not a bear, but a dark-figured, rough-looking man trying to stay hidden in a thicket. The man appeared to be carrying something over his shoulder, and Mr. Key assumed that the man might be a moonshiner, so he dismissed it at the time.
Okay.
And then when he learned about the missing boy, he immediately reported the sighting. Some people might be like, well, why didn't he say something? Well, the day Dennis went missing, the search didn't officially start until the 15th. They left there. They were there kind of, I think, for a day trip. So they went back home. They didn't live in the area. The minute he heard, after they were home, the minute he heard about the missing boy and that it was the same area, he immediately called in his tip. Now, I want to read a letter from Dennis's dad regarding this that he wrote. I'm not going to read the whole letter here. He's basically writing about some things that he's become aware of that disturbed him regarding the search.
And who's he writing this letter to?
He's writing to, I want to say park personnel, Mr. Hartzog. I'm not sure who that person is.
It's probably like the director or something like that, right?
It's somebody high up, I would imagine. I'll read the 3 things that he outlines here. Number 1, information had been given to the FBI regarding Dennis's disappearance. Certain items which I have discussed with the FBI agent are incorrect. Number 2, a 27-page summary has been made of the disappearance and search. There are discrepancies in this report. And number 3 is the one I really wanted to bring attention to because this pertains to the report from Mr. Keyes about seeing a rough-looking man carrying something over his shoulder in Cades Cove.
Okay.
During the past week, I contacted a person, Mr. Keyes, who may have seen a kidnapper. I talked to Mr. Keyes long distance several times, and he volunteered to come to the Smokies. He was contacted and came here to locate the area where he saw a suspicious person. Ranger Ed Widmer and the FBI agent met with Mr. Keyes. No attempt was made to contact me. I found out about 9 p.m. the next night that Mr. Keyes had been here. After calling Mr. Keyes at his home, I found that no explanation was given to him why I wasn't present. At my request, Ranger Widmer showed me the area the next day. This morning I found in the newspaper that Chief Ranger Lee Snedden gave a complete description of the visit to the local press. The description, complete with map, was given to the press for public knowledge before I knew that Mr. Keyes was here. Even so, the description is incorrect. The branch described is about 1 mile away from the place that was visited. The terrain and foliage is completely different. I visited Ranger Snedden today and discussed the situation. His answer was, "You have to cooperate with the press." I feel that I should have I should have this sort of information rather than the press. The public has now read this distorted report, and I expect many new stories and versions to be offered. We already have too many stories from persons who do not have correct information. So, basically...
What the F, man?
Dennis's dad did not leave the search area. He stayed there the entire time. Well, he never left.
That's incredible.
And he was involved. Like, they took him up in helicopters with loudspeaker, having him call Dennis's name, thinking that might help bring him out if he was in the area. He was involved every step of the way. This was not somebody sitting at home waiting to get news. This was a dad who was right in the thick of it.
And then they pull the rug out from his feet.
And they have this tip, and it was discounted. Okay, so the FBI completely dismissed this tip from Harold Keyes. They did not share the information with Bill Martin. They didn't allow Mr. Key to come to the area. This said they didn't. One account said he didn't come in person, but apparently he did come in person. The FBI said it wasn't possible for someone to hike from Spence Field to Cades Cove in the time needed for the sighting to be credible. That's what the FBI claimed. This was proven completely wrong because Bill Martin, Dennis's dad, and Dwight McCarter made the trek in 90 minutes. Dwight McCarter stated the FBI was behind discounting the tip, even though those experienced in the area knew it was a possibility. So everybody else who was experienced in doing that hike knew it was totally possible, and the FBI completely discounted the tip.
But why, though? Like, why would they do something like that? I don't know.
Dwight McCarter, he also felt dismissing the shoe and footprint so easily as made by the Boy Scouts was wrong. He actually appeared on, I think it was Good Morning America, on the 50-year anniversary of the disappearance, and he said that. He said it wasn't several footprints like you would see if there were several Boy Scouts. It was one set.
So clearly, they should have looked more into that.
Yeah. Dennis's family always felt that somebody took him.
I mean, yeah. What? Mr. Keyes described it almost perfectly.
Yeah, and Bill Martin, he voiced his belief that some people did have the ability to see or perceive things, and that's why a lot of the psychic tips were looked into. And I do want to read, after discussing the Harold Key sighting, something from a letter from a psychic. This was from a letter from the ESP Research Associates in Little Rock, Arkansas, from Harold Sherman, who was the president of the organization. And he had notoriety for writing several books. He was considered accurate in his premonitions. This is part of the letter that he wrote. I am impelled to ask you if you know whether or not there have been or are any questionable characters in this region, camping out in the wild in this area, like hermits, squatters. Such an individual may not be connected with the boy's disappearance at all, but I feel that a sex maniac, so-called, does exist in the vicinity and could have trailed the boy. I hesitate to write any more as my conscious mind is trying to reject such a feeling. I see something red and something being carried or dragged. Are there any caves in the vicinity? A stream may even run through it, or part of it. I am always tormented when impressions come to my conscious mind, trying to tell me what they couldn't possibly be true. But I get a feeling of sudden panic on the part of Dennis. What happened to him occurred suddenly, unexpectedly, and he could not or did not cry out. He seems to be struck down by something. The area is rugged. So...
You got that from Missing 411?
Missing 411, yeah.
Missing 411, Eastern United States, am I correct?
Yes.
Then what about Mr. Keyes, though, hearing like a little boy? They sound like a little boy shriek out, though.
Well, this is what's interesting. So Mr. Sherman, who wrote this letter to the Park Service, this was written, it's not like he heard about what Mr. Keyes said and is writing this. This was written separately from Mr. Keyes' opinion.
Same time, though?
During the search, it was during the time of the search. So you've got somebody who's in Arkansas writing this saying, hey, I've got this feeling that somebody took him, somebody living in the woods. Dwight McCarter has gone on record saying that there are people living off-grid in the national park system. He has said that. I've watched programs where he has said that.
Those are the scariest people. And I'm not saying they're, like, evil, but it's just, like, A, you don't know they're there. Mm-hmm. You think you know they're there. But then also, B, they evaded people for so long if they really want something, they can go back into hiding again because clearly we can't find them.
Right. If somebody is living in that area or even hanging in that, they know that area really well.
Every nook, every cranny, every shortcut, every downfall.
Exactly. Yep. So it's extremely frustrating as a parent to hear how dismissive the FBI was. Like, who are they to come in here and say, nope, that's not possible? Because guess what? The ranger station the grandfather hiked to report Dennis missing is located near Cades Cove. He did it in no time at all to get down there to tell them that his grandson was missing.
It was like 5:30. Dennis went missing. 8 o'clock, he was there.
By 8:30, he was there. I mean, but they searched. They were searching before he actually made the trek down to the ranger station.
Yeah.
So it's just, and then for the rangers, I mean, why didn't they speak up?
That's another thing too. It seems like the Rangers are trying to kind of like, okay, hey, look, FBI said this. Let's walk away from it.
Right. Years later, 1985. McCarter was contacted by a friend of his who was a longtime ginseng hunter. And this friend told Dwight McCarter about a time he was out hunting ginseng in the park several years earlier. So not recent, but a couple years before.
But it was after Dennis, though?
It was 1980s.
All right, so after Dennis.
He's hunting ginseng in the national park. It is illegal to do this. So this is why, this is the explanation as to why he did not come forward right away, because he's doing something illegal.
Fair.
So he says that he and another man were hunting ginseng up the Big Hollow in the Tremont area, and they were walking up a stream about 200 feet from a creek and came upon a small waterfall. There he noticed some bones that had been exposed when a tree had uprooted. The bones, he said, were a child's and included the skull. McCarter contacted his friends in search and rescue, and about 30 men went out searching, but nothing was found. The ginseng hunter, like I said, didn't speak up sooner because it wasn't legal to hunt ginseng.
They didn't find the bones?
No. But this is a couple years after, and on the map. And when you all get the link to the Google Maps, you, of course, can look around, on the internet on Google Maps. But the Tremont area is off.
Far right
from the area that they're looking. Because they didn't find the bones, it's hard to say exactly how they were positioned, but from this description, he's saying that a tree uprooted and that's how they were exposed. So that leads me to think that they were buried.
Yeah.
Which would make, animal's not going to bury them. This leads me to believe somebody purposefully buried them.
Human.
Yeah. It's also interesting that discussion of a waterfall, bodies of water, and Gene Dixon said you would find him near waterfall. So near the end of the search, they started paying special attention to vulture and buzzard activity. Mm-hmm. So just in case anybody's wondering about that, they did pay attention to that. Also, the smell of decomp. And they did search every time they saw any kind of activity or smelled anything. All they ever found were bodies of small animals. They found a dead bobcat and they found a dead dog. That's all they ever found. They did search for those things.
That's rough.
They did use dog teams during the search, but the heavy rains prevented the dogs from being able to find anything. So
basically now they know they're not finding Dennis at all alive.
Now, these are just points about the whole thing. They knew. Yeah, they knew that was it.
After about 3 days, I think they kind of got the hint.
Yeah, I would say by day 5, they pretty much knew. It was recovery more than a rescue. The search for Dennis was the largest in park history, and it drew the attention of the White House. And then after this search, there were massive changes made to search and rescue and how it was conducted. It completely revolutionized search and rescue techniques around the entire world. So, unfortunately, a little boy had to go missing, but in doing that, they changed things and it ended up saving lives the way they did things. The number of people involved in the search, there were people all over the place. They don't allow that anymore. Yeah. They also talked about with the dogs that I think having the dogs there more often, like in between the rains, because if he was alive and moving around, they could have picked up scent in between fresh scent. Okay. But, it's just a pretty awful situation. He's never been found.
So Dennis Martin, as of right now, 2021 of April. Don't look at me like that. We have kids. Days blend together, months blend together. But as of right now, it's never been seen, heard from ever again.
No.
Those remains that the hunter saw never been found again.
No, they never found those. Again, remote, rugged area. That's not super surprising that they didn't find them. I mean, It's even a couple years after they were seen.
Yeah.
That's a little frustrating to me. I don't care if you're... I mean, how much trouble are you going to get into for hunting ginseng in a national forest?
Yeah.
And that trumps...
What you find.
What you think is the body of a boy who went missing in 1969. If that ginseng hunter happens to listen to this podcast, shame on you. Seriously. Could have put his parents at ease, finally having their son back and being able to lay him to rest.
Yeah. That would
shame on you for that. My thoughts on this, I think Dennis was taken. I think Harold Key's account was completely accurate. I think he saw somebody abducting Dennis. Now, he did not, I don't want people to jump on him because I think he saw somebody carrying something, but he never said that it was a child that he saw him carrying.
He didn't see feet or hands or head hanging out of something.
It just looked, and he assumed at that time in late 60s, moonshiner, he's thinking it's somebody who's living in the woods, moonshine or whatever, doesn't want anybody to see him. Who's going to immediately think, oh, that guy's carrying an abducted child? You're not going there right away. I mean, maybe me, because, I'm the person who like looks at trash bags on the side of the road and is like, I wonder if there's a body in that bag.
Honestly, when I pass those, I get so nervous. I'm like, man, especially when they're definitely pushed up the trash bags and you're like, either something's in there is decomposing, or there's something nasty in that bag. But I'm on the same boat with you. It was just weird that Mr. Key saw something, A, before he actually saw the reports come out, and then B, to kind of put like a bow on top of all of it. I mean, he clearly saw the person. You know what I mean? And the description of what he was carrying kind of matches what Dennis was wearing. I will go as far as saying it was kidnapped by somebody that lived in the woods, that knew their way around the woods. So sad that this happened. It's terrible. I condolences to the family and all that. I mean, I know it's years later, but it's terrible. But at least something positive has come out of it, though. There's a lot of negative things that nothing changes. This happened, and this was the repercussions immediately. Yeah. So,
I do want to say that David Paulides talked to Dennis's father when he was researching this, and asked him if there was anything that he may not know, that David Paulides may not have come across in research. And one of the things that he mentioned was that the FBI agent who was there overseeing things ended up committing suicide.
So you think he might have knew something?
I don't know. It was kind of what I think Dennis Martin's dad was alluding to. I don't know. I don't really know the situation, but that is something that is mentioned when you read or look into this. And I'm also going to say, I don't really think Dennis Martin fits into Missing 411. I don't think this is a super mysterious case.
Oh, no.
The Green Beret were invited in by the Park Service, operated with the Park Service, did have special training and experience in that type of terrain. The dog's not finding the scent. When you have like 3 or more inches of rain, it washes it away. And that's what, that the handler said. They just couldn't get the scent because of the rain.
Right.
I don't think this particular one fits with the
401 kind of niche.
That's my thoughts after looking into it.
I agree with you, because there's some more we're going to go into later on that really go, that's interesting.
There are some cases. There's one in particular I would really like to cover. It's another kid, which is, I know, Tim's giving me a dirty look, because kids are hard when you're a parent, but it is one that really makes you question.
Okay.
It does make you question. I hate saying it's one of my favorite cases, because you don't want to have favorites of these, but it is interesting, and his dad has been such a champion for his son through it all that he's just as a parent, he's just inspiring as a parent, like the love for his kid still today. But anyway, we'll talk about that in the future.
Most definitely. Well, let's put a bow on this.
This puts a bow on this.
All right. A very sad bow. Well, Jamie, tell everybody where they can find us at.
You can find us at www.lurkpodcast.com, and you can find our episodes there. You can find links to our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We post any photos that we discuss. That's where we post them, is on our social media. So it's a good idea to like or follow us. We also have merch.
Merch!
Yes, and you can find a link to the merch on our Facebook page. You can also find that in the show notes. I've been including that link there as well. So if you want a shirt with a really cool logo, go buy it.
Yeah. Yes. Get the merch. Alrighty, well, I hope everyone has a great day.
All right, see y'all later and keep lurking.